Welcome to the channel. This is Robert Ballard from Retro Car Guy 530 LLC. Today we're going to be tackling the installation of a simple engineering front frame stiffening plate for a 2003 to 2006 Chevrolet SSR. This is a bare aluminum one that was polished by the owner after purchase. You can get a powder coated version one or the bare aluminum one. There are some holes that we have to drill on the front of this particular vehicle. Mid 2005 and earlier we'll need some holes drilled, and this bar and bolts are used to secure the stiffening plate to the front of the frame, and then the other bolts that are on the yellow mats there are used to replace the existing bolts that are on the X-brace that's there, and two bolts that are also in addition to the X-brace bolts. The air deflector is mounted on the front of the stiffening plate. That one's always mounted, while the one at the lower part of the screen there is only installed if an LC32 Crossmember is installed. So if you don't have that on your vehicle, you don't need to install that one. So we'll go through the installation process, do the drilling of the holes necessary to get this one installed on this particular 2004 Chevrolet SSR, and then you'll see the difference between the tubular X-brace that will be taken off in the next step, and you'll be quite amazed at how much of a difference it makes to the feeling and suspension feel of the whole front end of the vehicle. It's quite a difference. So let's get to work. Please review the automotive information, repair, and modification guidelines on this screen. Seek the advice of a repair professional if you're unsure how to perform any repair or modification safely and correctly. All repairs and modifications are performed at your own risk. The first task here is to remove the X-brace that's currently in the vehicle, and there are 4 bolts that need to be removed for that. And we'll be removing an additional bolt in the back as well for where the plate will be installing. So let's go ahead and do that. Now that we have the X-brace out of the underside here, the mounting locations were, of course, here, here, and then 2 in the back, but then the 2 additional bolts were taken out as well. We've cleaned up the brackets a little bit here, just to because we wanted to, and the thing that I want to point out here is the alignment bolts that are necessary to perform a front end alignment are 2 on each side here, and those correspond to the holes that are in the stiffening plate. So that you should be able to get sockets up into the area where the alignment bolts are at, so you can perform an alignment of the vehicle without taking off the stiffening plate. We need to install the stiffening plate in its general installed position to mark the holes for the front frame so we can drill those holes. So we're going to install the plate loosely with the bolts supplied. We're not going to torque them down. Other than in the front, we are going to torque them down just a little bit to make sure the plate is fully upright up against the metal so that the holes on the front of the stiffening plate can be positioned correctly so we can mark them. So we're going to do that now. Let's get the plate up in there and get the holes marked. I'm not going to take this oil-based white marker, and I've already primed the marker to the side here, and I'm going to use that to draw the circles for the holes here, so that when we remove the plate, we know where we need to drill. Okay, with that, let's drop the plate. All right, we have our 2 holes with a little bit of drainage here from the marker, but the circle areas are identified. So with that, we're going to move, get a center punch in here and try to center punch that, or it depends on, you could possibly get a pilot hole right away. We'll try center punch first, then use a stubby bit with a drill, which will have to be at an angle, and then we'll do an appropriate like channel bit or something that will let us drill the appropriate size hole for the bolt. the 8mm bolt. I'm going to take a center punch, see if I can get a good start to center of that hole, and then progress to a 1/8 inch drill bit. Looks like I've got a starting center punch hole there, so let's try our 90-degree drill. Again, it's not going to fit in here. Oh, we lucked out. What do you know? My Milwaukee drill with its stubby bit, it fits right in here. Small victories. Let's see if we can get a straight alignment here perpendicular to the surface. And of course I have my protective goggles on since I am drilling metal here. We're now going to drill the larger hole, and I've got a 5/16 stubby drill bit in here. It's just a hair larger than the 8mm bolt that's going to be going through here, so we have to go at a slight angle, but we'll work with that as we get in through the metal. See what we look like with the alignment of the bolts before we get anywhere close to putting the stiffening plate back in place. Actually, it looks pretty good. Let's test the bolt alignment here, get one of them started. So we have good alignment on the bolts, the holes for the bolts on the front, which means we are at the point where we can take that back out, lift the plate back into its upright position up against the bottom here. These particular retainers for these nuts need to be left in place. The plate will go up against them, and which is fine. Do not remove these, since that will leave the nut free to move around here. I was advised by Simple Engineering to leave them in place. So with that, let's clean up the metal shavings and get ready to install the stiffening plate. We're now going to install the front air deflector on the front end of the large opening in the stiffening plate. This air deflector causes air to be pulled out of the main engine compartment. You mount the front air deflector on the bottom side of the stiffening plate. We're looking at the bottom side right now in this view of the stiffening plate. You mount it using the 2 1/4 inch bolts. There are 1/4 bolts that are included in the kit, using a 5/32 inch Allen wrench, and you use a 7/16 inch wrench for the nuts on the top side of the plate to secure it. Let's make sure it's in a good position. It feels even as far as alignment with the edge of the opening. So let's go ahead and tighten them up. All right. Next, we're going to make sure it doesn't hit or vibrate against the plate. So bend it up just a little bit so that if it does vibrate, it's not hitting the plate. And so that part's installed. Now that we've got the front holes drilled for this particular one, for this SSR, and we have this air deflector in place, and we don't need the one for the LC32 bracket in the back, we're ready to flip this over, put it up against the vehicle, and install it with the 2 8mm bolts in the front in here, and then the 6 bolts that are used to secure it in the back, and we'll tighten them from front to back. So we're going to loosely put it up against the vehicle and get the bolts in place, and then begin the tightening sequence from front to back. I have the large bolts on the bottom side extremely loose. These are just barely finger tight touching the bottom, and on the back ones they are loose to allow the most droop to the whole thing. They are actually within the lip in the back. Going to attempt to bring in the bolts on the front here to bring in the front lip of this to the metal of the truck. I'm going to now torque the front bolts. I'm going to use my electric wrench to bring them in, not torque them, and then switch over to a torque wrench and torque them up to no more than 32 foot-pounds. So I'm going to switch the socket over to the torque wrench and get them torqued to 32 foot-pounds. And now we're going to tighten up the other 6 bolts that are remaining on the bottom side here, going from front to back as well. Set the torque to 40. Let's move to the rear 4 bolts. Go from center outward. Here's an example of the frame stiffening plate installed on a Chevrolet SSR that also has the LC32 Crossmember installed. The second air deflector that's included in the simple engineering kit is to be used in this configuration, and only in this configuration. If the OEM Crossmember is still installed on your vehicle, you do not use the second air deflector that we see here. The air deflector is mounted by using the 3 bolts included in the kit. They're countersunk, and they go up, and then the air deflector goes on the top side of the plate, and then the nylon locking nuts on the top side of that, of the air deflector. The air deflector faces forward and wraps around the front tube that's part of the LC32 Crossmember. And you would want to adjust the plate just as necessary to make sure it's not rubbing and vibrating up against the LC32 Crossmember tube, and also that it's not vibrating against any metal from the vehicle itself. So in that configuration, you've seen the LC32 Crossmember and the second air deflector installed. Also to note, this is the powder-coated version of the stiffening plate as well. This concludes the installation steps for the Chevrolet SSR and Trailblazer SS front frame stiffening plate from Simple Engineering. Please keep in mind, as a caution going forward, the front frame stiffening plate is no longer a viable jacking location for your vehicle. Jacks have been known to slip off the plate and cause damage to the vehicle when the jack slips off, and the vehicle may come to the ground and may cause physical damage to the vehicle or personal injury to anyone under the vehicle. So please do not use that as a jacking location going forward. Use any other normal jacking location on the vehicle other than where the stiffening plate has been installed. So with that, thanks for coming to the Retro Car Guy 530 LLC YouTube channel for your installation steps for your simple engineering products. Thank you for watching. If you like this video, smash that like button. If you're stopping by the channel for the first time and you want to, please subscribe. Click that bell icon to get notified when I upload new videos. Please follow Retro Car Guy 530 on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Thanks for taking the time to visit the channel, and I'll see you in the next one.